All right, I'm going to repeat the preliminary announcements I made earlier because they weren't captured by the court reporter. Again, we're now in session Superior Court of Chatham County. This hearing has been conducted by video conference pursuant to Uniform Superior Court Rule 9, as modified by the Georgia Supreme Court during the state of emergency. Again, asking all participants to remain muted until you're asked to speak. If you fail to do this, it may cause the lags in the video. And these proceedings are going to be live streamed. And I gave the information earlier about how to access the live streaming. Again, you go to court.chathamcountyga.gov, click on Resource tab at the top right-hand corner, then click on Live.
Okay, so he's going to cover this hearing, and I'm free to listen to it without getting anybody's feelings hurt. All right, that's good, man, because
I'm asking everybody to mute. I know who's talking in the background. All right. Again, click on Resource tab at the top right-hand corner. Click on Live Courtroom Feeds. Click on Judge Bass Box, which will be green when live stream is started, and red when inactive. So those are the live stream instructions. And again, for the record, it looks like all counsel is present for the petitioner. But again, for the record, if you want to announce yourselves, please, counsel.
right, no, I agree. I mean,
Yes, Your Honor. This is Dwight Feamster, local counsel for the petitioners, along with Jonathan Crumley and Brian Jackito of Taylor, English, and Duma. As counsel for the petitioners, Daniel Jenkins is here as counsel for the affiant that's attached to the affidavit attached to the petition.
And then for the respondent, Chatham County Board of Elections.
Yes, sir, Your Honor. Ben Perkins on behalf of the Chatham County Board of Elections. In addition, I have Colin McRae with me because he's the chairman of the Chatham County Board of Registrars, which is implicated in the petition. Also present with me is Sabrina German, who is the director of voter registration for the Chatham County Board of Registrars.
All right. And Mr. Hart, you're here in what capacity? You gotta mute yourself.
I see Mr. Hart is having a problem with the mute button. Mr. Hart is co-counsel with me.
All right, good. All right. All right.
And good morning, Your Honor. It's Jeff Harris. I don't know if you saw it. We filed a motion to intervene before the hearing on behalf of the Democratic Party of Georgia. So I'm here in my capacity as an intervener on behalf of the Democratic Party.
All right, thank you.
Nobody's gotten us a copy of that.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
they need to email it to us because
It was emailed and also e-filed, but I'll email it again.
All right, thank you. All right. Does any party object to these proceedings being held by video conference?
None for the petitioner.
All right, good.
No, Your Honor.
All right. Well, I'm going to turn to the petitioner to make their opening statement and any other remarks you want to make at this point.
Your Honor, Mr. Chumley will be our lead counsel, so he'll make that statement.
All right, Victor.
Thank you, Your Honor. Again, it's Jonathan Crumley for the Trump campaign. We're here in Savannah. We also have, for the petitioners, Vincent Russo and Josh Belenfanti in Atlanta for the Georgia GOP. And also appearing for the Trump campaign is Brian Tyson, but he's in Atlanta as well on WebEx. The petition is frankly fairly simple. Created a good bit of press attention, so I probably should start with clarifying what this is not about. Nobody is seeking to stop the counting of any legal ballots. Nobody's seeking to change longstanding Georgia law on receiving and handling absentee ballots. What we are here to do, Your Honor, is to ensure that all legal ballots cast are counted in Chatham County, but that no illegal ballots or late receiving ballots, which don't comply with this decades-old statute, are counted. What transpired is that some of the polling monitors for the campaign, as noted in the affidavit, encountered a situation where there was not clear evidence of how Chatham County Board of registrars was handling the intake and storage of late arriving ballots, which under the statutes in Georgia are not legal votes, and how the legal votes, which were received by the Board of Registrars prior to 7 o'clock on Election Day, were handled. As noted in our petition and the statute, those mail ballots that arrive after 7 o'clock to the Board of Registrars are to be segregated or set aside, and there should be a clear chain of custody so that all parties and all citizens in Georgia understand and know that those ballots are not to be counted in the vote totals for either party or any candidate on the ballot. What transpired, as we laid out in the affidavit, is that the observer noted some handling of the ballots that raised concerns. They asked questions about the chain of custody procedures implemented by the Board of Registrars and the Board of Elections, and did not receive sufficient answers to be comfortable that the law was being applied, which is what led to the petition and is shown in the affidavit. Quite simply, all the Trump campaign and the state GOP are looking for is clear, traceable, auditable procedures implemented by Chatham County that assures all citizens of Georgia that the vote is secure, that all legitimate cast votes are counted, and that no ballots that received outside the parameters of the statute are included in any of the vote count in Chatham County. Unfortunately, what our observers encountered the day after the election did not give that certainty to the campaign or to the state GOP. Quite simply, all we ask is that the court direct both the Board of Registrars and the Board of Electors as entities that these ballots follow proper procedures to ensure that the statute.
I'm sorry, somebody's talking, there's some interference going on. Yeah. Everyone else not talking needs to mute themselves because you get interference. Go ahead, continue. I'm sorry.
Sorry, Your Honor.
That's right.
Okay, and to keep the conclusion brief, again, all the Trump campaign wants is every legal vote cast is counted, but that no illegal votes or late received absentee ballots are counted because the statute that the 11th Circuit has found to be a neutral, non-discriminatory election procedure should be applied. And that statute is unequivocal. If a mail-in ballot is not received before 7 p.m. on Election Day, it is not to be counted in the vote total for any candidate. That's simply what we're seeking, is that we get assurances from the proper officials in Chatham County that they have in place adequate procedures that are traceable and auditable, that this procedure is being followed.
Thank you. I want to turn to the respondents to comment.
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. Ben Perkins on behalf of the Board of Elections and Board of Registrars. Your Honor, just as a threshold issue, the Board of Elections is the entity that counts the votes. The Board of Registrars is the entity that receives the ballots, receives the absentee ballots. And so I just wanted Your Honor to know that the proper party would be the Board of Registrars. We're here, we're ready to proceed. I just wanted to note that for the record.
Right.
As to what Mr. Crumley said, he's asking the court to enter an order requiring the Board of Registrars to comply with the law. The problem with that is, Your Honor, that there's no evidence that the Board of Registrars has not complied with the law. And to establish that fact, Your Honor, Mr. McRae will testify regarding the process for handling late received absentee ballots. And specifically, he will talk about that segregation process, the same process that Mr. Crumley discussed, and he will explain to the court that that process is followed by the Board of Registrars. That addresses that first issue. And then the second issue relates to something Mr. Pumphrey says in the affidavit that's attached to the petition related to 53 absentee ballots that he observed and had questions about. Ms. German, who's to my left, will testify regarding those ballots, and she will explain to the court that those ballots, for whatever reasons, did not scan properly, and then the Board of Registrars then had to take the additional steps to verify that those ballots were timely received and that were otherwise proper. And then after going through that process, that they then are placed into the materials that are to be transmitted over to the Board of Election for counting. And so, Your Honor, we believe that because there's no evidence that the Board of Registrars does not already comply with Georgia law, that the petition should be denied.
All right, thank you. Okay, let's begin with the evidence presented by the petitioner.
Thank you, Your Honor. Before we go to the evidence, Your Honor, the petitioner, given the jurisdictional issues raised by the Board of Election, we would ask by motion that the Board of Registrar be added to this. They're present in the hearing, represented by counsel and the chairman.
All right, any objections, I'll amend it.
Your Honor, I have no objection unless Mr. Hart has any objection.
I haven't.
All right, the stands amended.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
The petitioner would like to call Sean Pumphrey.
Yeah, Mr. Humphrey, you mind raise your right hand? The clerk will swear again, sir.
You do solemnly swear that the evidence you should give the court on the issue pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
Yes.
Thank you. Could you please state your name for the record?
Sean Pumphrey.
Now, Mr. Pumphrey, how did you become familiar with the absentee ballot handling process in Chatham County?
So I work for the Georgia GOP over in the Augusta, Georgia area, and was sent down yesterday to assist my coworker Jackson Carter in the observation process.
Okay, and which part of the process did you specifically seek to observe the day after the election?
We were observing the overall absentee process.
Okay. And did you have an encounter with certain ballots on that day?
Yes.
And could you tell the court what happened?
So essentially, my coworker and I, Jackson Carter, we located the remaining absentee ballots that were to be sent over to the warehouse in 4 mail crates. So we were watching those mail crates being taken into the room where they were placed in the bins to be transferred to the warehouse. During that time, when the final 4th mail bin was being loaded, a woman walked in from another room with a handful of ballots and then placed them on the table. At that time, I notified my coworker, Jackson Carter, what I had witnessed, and then we identified the ballots on the table. We had another person present with us. His name is Mike, and Steve, sorry. Sorry. So at that time, Jackson went to go get Steve. Steve came into the room, and we went to an outside lobby where we told the Board of Elections I had witnessed, and then we went back into a room where the Board of Elections official introduced me to Miss Sabrina, and then that is where my coworker Jackson Carter confronted and asked, where are those ballots? Why did they come in late? And then at that time, she became very agitated that we were even asking her. And she explained to us that they were not on the original manifest, and that's why they were added late on the table and were on their way to the warehouse to be opened.
And did you ask this official about what processes they used to maintain separation between the late received ballots and the properly received absentee ballots?
So my coworker Jackson Carter was the one who actually spoke with her and confronted her on the issue and why those ballots were added late, where did they come from, and where are they now? Because when we re-entered the room, those ballots were no longer on the table.
Okay. And then what happened next?
So after, like I said, she seemed very agitated, explained to us that they were not on the original manifest, that's why they were added late. And then when she told us they were on their way to the warehouse, where Mr. Jackson Carter and I immediately got in his car and went over to the warehouse to try and identify those ballots.
And what happened at the warehouse?
So all the ballots were being removed from the bins. We saw the 3 ballots that she explained to us on the table, but we did not see the other 53 ballots. We could not identify them.
And, sorry, got some street work going on behind us. What, did you have any interactions with officials at the warehouse?
No.
Okay. What was your understanding of what was to happen at that warehouse?
That's where ballots were being open and
scanned
Yes, sir.
and counted.
Yes, sir.
Is that correct?
Yes,
Okay.
sir.
So that's where these mail-in ballots were tabulated.
Yes.
Where the ballots were opened and scanned.
Yes.
Okay. And you say ballots, which you talked about. Are you certain these are all mailed-in absentee ballots?
Yes.
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 Perfect. Thank you. All right. Now, at any time did a board of registrars or board of elections official explain to you the segregation process between late arriving mail-in ballots and properly arrived or timely arrived mail-in ballots?
No, like I said, my coworker Jackson Carter, he did confront Ms. Sabrina about that, and that's where she gave us the explanation that they were not originally on the manifest, and that's why they were brought in from another room and placed on that table.
Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Pumphrey.
All right, cross-examination?
Thank you, Your Honor. Mr. Pumphrey, you're not saying that any of these 53 absentee ballots were ballots received after 7 p.m. on Election Day, correct?
No, what I was saying when I witnessed was ballots that were not with the original mail forward crates that we saw rubber band and had paper on top of them. Those ballots that I saw later added were not with those original ballots. They were brought in a handful and then placed on the table.
You're not saying that those ballots were received after 7 p.m. on Election Day, correct?
I can't confirm when they were received.
Anything else? All right, that's all I've got. Thank you, Your Honor.
All right, any other evidence by the petitioners?
One quick question for Mr. Pumphrey. Did
All right.
One redirect, Your Honor, if I might?
Sure.
Yes. And did this election official indicate to you that the ballots she was handling were timely received?
We were not provided any of that information.
Okay. So you were not given information from the election official whether they were timely received or not?
No, like I said, Jackson, my coworker Jackson Carter was the one who directly spoke with her.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
All right, anything else?
Not for this witness, Your Honor.
All right.
We would like to
Cole, all right, please do.
And we call Jackson Clark, I'm sorry. Carter?
All right, Scott.
And Carter, I'm sorry.
Mr. Carter, please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the evidence you should give the court on the issue pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth. Help you God?
I do.
Thank you. Would you please state your full name for the record?
Jackson Rogers Carter.
Okay. Mr. Carter, you just heard Mr. Pumphrey's testimony. Were you with Mr. Pumphrey the day he's described?
Yes.
All right. And have you reviewed Mr. Pumphrey's affidavit that was submitted with the petition?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And are you the Jackson Carter referenced in the affidavit? Thank you. Can you please describe for the court the interaction you had with the election official in Chatham County?
Yes, sir. So after I come back in the room and Sean had notified me about the ballots that came from a separate room that were not with the original 4 mail crates, I went looking for Mr. Russell Bridges, who was not present at the time at the Board of Elections office, and I had seen Mr. Mahoney outside giving a press conference during the time this was all happening, and so I pulled him inside, told him about the situation, and so he really didn't seem to know what was going on with it, and so we went in and talked to Miss Sabrina, who was in the Board of Registrars and was the one who was carrying the mail crates into the room where they were being put into the sealed containers. And so we asked Miss Sabrina why they weren't with the original 4 mail crates and had come from a separate room, not rubber banded, and did not have any paper on them. So she claims that they were not on the manifest and had to be entered into a computer system for data purposes in a manner that we were not able to understand and did not make much sense.
And the boxes you mentioned, what type of ballots are you aware of were in those boxes?
They were absentee ballots.
And can you describe in any more detail the conversation you had with Miss Sabrina? What did she say? How did that go?
So as we asked her as if any poll watcher would, why those ballots were not with the original ones, and she seemed kind of reluctant to answer and said that that the names on those ballots weren't on the manifest, and so they had to be entered into a computer for data, which, to my knowledge, all the absentee ballots were identified in another room when their information and signatures were matched up together. However, these weren't in the room with the ones in the mail crates had come from that room. And then I asked her again to clarify more, and she got a little hostile and raised her tone, took off her face mask, and just loudly interjected and said she knew what she was talking about, a stack of 53 and a stack of 3, and told us that they were already in the container and on the way to the annex to be scanned.
Did she give you any information whatsoever about how the Board of Registrars tracked these ballots, received them, and tracked the chain of custody for the ballots? Did she give you any information about the date and time of receipt for any of these ballots? Okay, and what day and time did this occur?
This was yesterday around 2:15, 2:30, in that time span.
All right, so that's November 4th?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And were you seeking information about how these mail ballots were handled in terms of tracking the chain of custody and ensuring that they were not commingled with late arriving ballots?
Well, yes, sir. My original intent, the second batch of mail ballots to be scanned over at the annex were supposed to be delivered around noon. And when I was notified that they hadn't showed up, it was, way past 1:30. And so that's why I went looking for the rest of the absentee ballots. We started off in the back room where the information and signatures were being checked. They told us that they were up front in the 4 mail bins, being ready to go. And at that time, when we first arrived, Ms. Sabrina was not there. She was, excuse me, she was apparently on her lunch break, even after the fact that the ballots were supposed to be delivered at 12, and it was their responsibility to transport them into the room and put them in the containers to be picked up, and then notify those at the annex to come pick them up. And so she did not provide any other explanation on how those were transported from another room.
Did any officials, either at the Board of Registrars or the Board of Elections at the warehouse you went to, provide any information on what procedures they use to track chain of custody on mail absentee ballots?
No, sir.
Did they give you any information whatsoever on how they handle late received ballots received after 7 o'clock on election day? Okay. Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Clark.
All right, cross-examination?
Yes, Your Honor. Mr. Carter, you're not claiming that these 53 ballots that you're talking about were received after 7 p.m. on election night. Am I correct?
I do not have that knowledge.
All right, thank you. I don't have any further questions, Your Honor.
All right, okay, that's it. Any other evidence by petitioners?
No, Your Honor.
All right. Do the respondents plan to put up any evidence, though?
Your Honor, I do have evidence to present, but given the fact that the
I understand what you're going to say, but I'm going to reserve anything. So you want to put up any evidence, put it up.
Yes, sir. Thank you. Your Honor, I'd like to call Colin McRae. And Your Honor, would you like me to swear him, or would you like the court reporter to do so?
The clerk will swear him in.
You do solemnly swear that the evidence you should give the court on the issue pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Could you please state your full name?
Yes, I'm Colin McCray. I'm the chair of the Chatham County Board of Registrars.
And in your capacity as the chairman of the Chatham County Board of Registrars, are you familiar with the processes and procedures utilized by the Chatham County Board of Registrars of absentee ballots?
Yes, I've been on the board for 15 years, chair for approximately 12, and have become familiar with those processes at that time.
Mr. McCray, can you please tell us about the processes related to the receipt by the Board of Registrars of absentee ballots?
Sure. So one of the principal duties of the Chatham County Board of Registrars is to administer the absentee ballot process. We have procedures in place to ensure that only properly and timely received ballots are considered and for counting. The process of receipt of those ballots can be basically one of three ways: through the mail, through our in-person at our office, they can be dropped off, or we instituted this year for the first time at with the authorization of the Secretary of State, we implemented the absentee drop-off box process. The mail process is overseen by our staff. They work closely with the U.S. Postal Service to ensure that as many ballots as the Postal Service has in its possession as of 7 p.m. are delivered to us at 7 p.m. The absentee drop-off boxes are checked pursuant to the regulations promulgated by the State Election Board. They are checked every 24 hours during the 3 weeks leading up to Election Day. And then on Election Day, they're checked first thing in the morning, and then one final time at 7 p.m. At 7 p.m., once that final check is made, the kiosk is locked, and there is an actual physical barrier that is locked into the slot so that no additional absentee ballots can be deposited in the drop-off box. Everything that's collected at 7 p.m. is then taken over to the headquarters so that they can be processed, signature verified, et cetera, for transfer over to the Board of Elections. Then, of course, there's the process, which is much more rarely used now in the wake of the pandemic, where some voters actually bring their ballots in to our office and hand them over in person. We have a box right out front, so most voters who are coming to the Eisenhower headquarters just drop them off in that box. But those are the three ways in which the absentee ballots are received by the Board of Registrars.
Okay, Mr. McCray, I'm going to show you some documents and ask you to identify them for us, please. Your Honor, I'm sorry, I'm having a slight technical difficulty. I'm going to try again. Spend it?
Let's see.
There. Okay. I'm not sharing it. Is that shared to your screen, Your Honor?
Yeah, it's clear.
Okay, you see the photo?
Yep, I do.
Okay. All right, and Mr. McCray, you see the photo that's being shared?
Yes.
Okay, what is that?
So that's a photo that I took sort of serendipitously just to document it for my own purposes. That is an absentee drop-off box at the WW Law Community Center here in Savannah. You see it on the left. That to the right is Stuart, who is a volunteer who helped out in the ballot collection team. For the 7 p.m. collection on election night, we had one staff member or board member along with one volunteer. He accompanied me to the WW Law. And there in the middle is my son Carter, who I was just taking a picture to document it, just future purposes. The reason that that's significant is on the absentee ballot drop-off box, you can see that we had inserted the locked kiosk closed sign. The timestamp up the top, again, serendipitous, is 7:04. It was taken 4 minutes after we locked that absentee drop-off box so that no additional ballots could be received through drop-off box. And that process was replicated at all 10 of our drop-off boxes. The locking of the slot so that no additional ballots could be tendered, that was done at all of those drop-off boxes.
So this exhibit is a screenshot from your phone showing not only the photograph that you just described, but also showing the timestamp showing that this photograph was taken at 7:04 p.m.
That's right.
Okay. All right, I'm going to now move to another photograph. Your Honor, does that photograph of a banker's box, show up on your screen?
It does.
Okay. Mr. McRae, do you see that photograph?
Yes, I do.
What is that?
So that is the box into which late received ballots are sequestered. We have our absentee ballot clerk, Keith Flager. They are immediately behind his desk. And as any ballots received after the 7 p.m. election night deadline are received by us, they're sequestered in that box so that he can process them and send a letter to the voter informing them that their ballot was late and therefore rejected.
And so that the ballots that we can sort of see in that image, those are post 7 p.m. ballots received by the Board of Registrars.
That's right.
And they are sequestered.
And they are sequestered by themselves in that box.
I don't want that one.
Sure.
What is this photograph?
So that's just to get perspective. That's the desk of our absentee ballot clerk, Keith Flager. The box into which all late received and rejected ballots, that box is immediately behind his chair so that he can keep them secure, but also have access to them to process them and send a letter to those voters.
Yeah, that's what I was trying to find. Oh, that's the PDF. Yeah. That's this one, right? All right, well, Your Honor, I brought up another document on the screen. Are you able to see it?
I can. I can't make the writing out. I can see it, yeah.
I certainly understand that. Okay, Mr. McRae should be able to explain to us what this is. Mr. McRae, what is that document?
Yes, this is the log that is maintained by Mr. Flager, our absentee ballot clerk, of the ballots that were received after the deadline and therefore rejected. He logs those in this spreadsheet format, both for documentation purposes, but also to give him a list of the individuals to whom a letter must be sent informing them that their ballot was late received and therefore rejected.
Okay, and Mr. McRae, this document has, it looks like 42 rows. The first row of it, however, is just a description of what each column shows. Is that correct?
That's right. So there would be 41 ballots listed on that. Those are the 41 ballots that have been sequestered as rejected for being late.
Okay. And so these ballots that are listed on this document are not transmitted to the Board of Elections to be counted?
No, they're not. What's done with those is they are sequestered, and once the letters have been sent out to the voters, they are retained with the county's administrative services for 2 years per the statute. So they are gathered up into this box and then sent for long-term storage with administrative services.
Mr. McRae, is there anything else you would like to add? You've been present for the testimony of Mr. Carter and Mr. Pumphrey. Anything else that you would like to add that relates to the relief sought by the petitioner?
The only thing that I'd like to add is this morning, after being notified late yesterday about appearing here and about these 53 ballots, I worked with Sabrina and with our absentee ballot clerk and with the people in the processing department, the warehouse annex for counting purposes. I asked that I be shown the 53 ballots that had been sequestered for the purposes of having them individually verified.
And when you're talking about the 53 ballots, these are the ballots that Mr. Pumphrey and Mr. Carter referenced?
That's right, those 53. And I asked the staff over at the county annex if I could look at those ballots to ensure that they were timely received ballots. I looked at all 53, and all 53 of those ballots were timely received.
Okay. And you've got a document before you that I know that Ms. German will also speak to, but I'll go ahead and bring it on my screen. What is this document?
This is the reconciliation form. It's a chain of custody document for simplification purposes, but it's the document that accompanies ballots that are transferred from our office, from the Board of Registrars to the Board of Elections for the purpose of counting. This document is the one that accompanied the 53 ballot in question, and a copy was made for me this morning at that processing center as I was given those ballots to look at the timestamp on the 53 ballot.
And what did you find about the timestamps?
The timestamps were all showed that they were timely received.
I've got my mouse at the sort of the bottom of the screen just to point one thing out. What is that indicating there?
Yeah, that's that 53 that's circled. That's the number of ballots. This form is used by us as our end of the chain of custody, and when that batch of ballots is received by the processing staff over at the counting center, they match up to number to ensure that there is an equal number of ballots reflected in our form and the number that are actually tendered to them.
Okay. This is a multi-page document. Again, we can talk about Ms. German as well, but just briefly, what do we see on these following pages?
Yeah, the following pages are the identifying information for the 53 voters whose ballots were amongst that batch that were transferred over.
Okay. All right. Let's see. Stop sharing.
Upload the document.
Oh, there we go. All right. Mr. McRae, anything else that you would like to offer to the court?
Not at this time.
Your Honor, as far as the housekeeping side of this, all of these exhibits have been emailed to the court and also to the parties. I hope they've all received them at this last minute. I have not marked them, but I will want to move these into evidence when the time comes, Your Honor.
All right, good. Any questions, examination, Mr. Gray? Any cross? No? Okay.
Wait, he's not.
Sorry, Your Honor, I'm on mute.
Okay.
This is
All right,
John
that's-
Crumley.
All right.
My apologies. And Mr. Perkins, could you share those exhibits again, please? I'm here in Savannah and not in my office, so I can't do that from my end.
Yes, sir. I'll be glad to. My assistant is Deb Gronziak, Grondziak. Do you see an email from her?
Yeah, I have them on my iPhone, but I was hoping to put them back up if possible.
Oh, I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. Okay, sure. Which one would you like first?
Could we start with the early processing of absentee ballots reconciliation form?
Yeah, this one.
Yeah, that's a PDF. Big one. That's it.
There you go, sir.
Thank you. And then Mr. Gray, did I read the title to that form correctly?
Early processing of absentee ballots reconciliation form, then it's got 4E8, which denotes the batch.
Got it. Okay, that was my first question is what did that denote? So that denotes the batch. And if I heard you correctly, your testimony is that the 53 there and the number of outer envelopes, number of absentee ballots, that is the reference to the stack of ballots that Mr. Pumphrey and Mr. Carter testified about earlier?
Yes, that's my understanding.
Okay. And why is this the early processing form being used when it notes that it was processed the day after the election, November 4th?
Yeah, good point. I think that that's probably just the form that's used. And instead of printing out a whole bunch of new forms that would apply just to processing on election day and after, this might be a question for someone from the Board of Elections, but that would be my understanding, is that that form is continued to be used even when the processing continues on election day and thereafter.
And how were you able to confirm that the 53 noted on this form were in fact the 53 ballots that were testified to about earlier?
Well, so I went over, first of all, I went over with Sabrina German, who's here, who was there present when the two poll watchers came to our office with their concern. And we also asked the staff that were over at the processing center, what was the batch in question. And they directed us to this 4E8 as the batch of documents that was at issue.
And we heard earlier that that batch did not have, they were not rubber banded, didn't have a timestamp page attached or anything. Was there a timestamp, or were they rubber banded when you observed them in the warehouse?
They were time-stamped, yes. And again, they were time-stamped all in timely fashion, November 3rd and earlier.
And was there any tracking information, timing of departure from Board of Registrars to receipt in the warehouse?
So this document does reflect that the date and time of 11/4/2020 at 4:05 p.m. Under the first section, Roman numeral I, absentee ballot processing.
Got it. But this form was not affixed to in any way this stack of 53 ballots, correct?
When I saw them, it was, yes.
When you saw them in the warehouse?
That's right.
Okay. Mr. Perkins, can you put up the photographs of the boxes?
Yes, sir. I'll do my best.
Thank you. You're better with technology than me, I'll give you that.
Just give me a chance.
All right. Now, Mr. McRae, I believe, as it's indicated there in the picture, there's this taped on printed sheet, rejected, received after deadline. Do you see that?
Yes.
And and there are apparently multiple boxes with the same page taped on the top, correct?
No.
No? There's only one box?
That's correct.
All right. All right, Mr. Perkins, you sent 1, 2, 3, 4 photographs that look like the same office. Can you put those up in order?
This one?
Yeah, that one.
Okay.
Mr. McRae, whose office is that and what boxes are those?
So this is the office or it's the desk of Keith Flager, our absentee ballot clerk. And the box behind the chair that's slightly ajar, that's the box that we're talking about. Those other roughly 10 boxes would be, and they have, documents or sheets on top identifying what they are. Those would be for various other materials that would be collected in boxes, perhaps for storage or perhaps for easy access. But at the time of taking this photo, which was first thing this morning, there are only 41 ballots that have been late received. So there's only the need for one box at this point.
Were you aware that in 2018, Chatham reported receiving 492 late arriving ballots?
That sounds about in 2018, but
Yeah.
I'm not aware of the number, but that could be, that sounds right.
Is it fair to say that given the way this election occurred and the emphasis on mail-in ballots, that there were likely fewer mail-in ballots used in 2018 in Chatham County than 2020?
Very fair to say that.
Okay. And how many late arriving ballots do you say are in these cardboard boxes in Mr. Flager's office?
I didn't say they were in the boxes. I said they were in that one box. And
One
again,
box. Oh, my apologies.
Yep. Keep in mind, this was collected from 1 day's worth of ballots received.
Has there been any effort to retrieve any other late arriving absentee ballots?
As of 7:45 this morning, no.
Okay, so it's possible there are other late arriving ballots still in the Board of Registrar's office?
No.
So that one box would be the entirety of late arriving ballots.
That have been received in the 24-hour period after the cutoff. Yes, that's correct. We had not had a delivery from the U.S. Postal Service yet this morning. I assume there will be some later today, and there will probably be some late arriving ballots that will then be sequestered and processed in the same fashion that these were.
Okay. And that box of late arriving ballots, is it still in Mr. Flager's office today? And I'm sorry, is it Mr. Flager or Miss Flager? I've missed that.
Mr.
Yeah.
It was there 2 hours ago, or excuse me, 3 hours ago.
And how is Mr. Flager's office secured? Who has access to that office?
Well, it's in the main headquarters. It's not in the furthest back office, but it's in a back office. It is secured in the evening time in the manner that the entire office is secured and locked. And he is the absentee ballot clerk, sits there at that desk, and he's the one who handles them.
And remind me again, what is in those other boxes next to the rejected ballots box?
I don't know. Other random items, they're not rejected ballots.
Right, got it.
I couldn't tell you what's in every box in my own office. I certainly couldn't tell you what's in every box at his office.
That I would don't know the gentleman, but I'd have to say that's a fair statement. When will that box of rejected late arriving ballots be transmitted to the clerk's office? Superior Court clerk.
I don't know that for certain. There's probably some point of first of all, those letters have to be sent out to alert the voters that their ballots were rejected due to their late arrival. Once a sufficient number have been received, processed, letters sent out, and there's enough to send to off-site storage with administrative services, I'm sure that there's a point that Mr. Flager determines it's time to pack those up and send them on their way.
Okay. I believe that's all I have for Mr. McCrary. Thank you.
All right, any other questions? Mr. Murray? Okay, thank you, sir.
Yes, Your Honor.
All right, any other evidence?
Yes, Your Honor, I'd like to call Sabrina German.
Okay.
Ms. German, if you'll please raise your right hand. You do solemnly swear that the evidence you should give the court on the issue pending shall be the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth, so help you God?
I do.
Ms. German, could you state your full name, please?
Sabrina German,
What is your job title, Ms. German?
Director of Voter Registration
And where do you work?
at the Chatham County Voter Registration Office.
And are you familiar with the issue raised by Mr. Humphrey and Mr. Carter regarding the 53 ballots that we've been discussing today.
Yes.
Okay. Can you please explain to the court what you know as it relates to those 53 absentee ballots?
Yes, those 53 absentee ballots do not appear on the actual list of voters or the manifest that we would have had to take to the elections office. And we had to do further research on those absentee ballots. What happens is that we're able to enter ballots into the system in a mass update format, and we were not able to enter those in a mass update format simply because some of them may have been canceled ballots or something else may have been going on with the voter where they called or whatever. So we had to actually look at the voters one by one on a case by case basis to enter and give them credit for voting. And after giving them credit for voting, we then had to create a new manifest for the voters.
Okay, so let me make sure I understand this. So when absentee ballots come in, some are very easy to process. Is that right?
Yes.
For some, there are various problems that basically slow down the processing of those particular ballots. Is that right?
Yes.
Okay. As to the 53 ballots that were out here, those had some kind of a problem that required them to have special attention?
Correct.
Okay. And then can you tell the court again, what type of special attention was given to those ballots?
The voter themselves could request a second ballot because they probably spoiled the ballot, or and therefore we had to go into the system to cancel the ballot out. And once they would cancel the ballot out, they may have used an envelope, and then the envelope has a different number on there for the scanning purposes. So we have to actually go into the system and actually enter those on a case by case basis.
Okay. Now, you're familiar with these 53 ballots that we're talking about. As for these 53 ballots, were these 53 ballots found to be timely received?
Yes, all of these ballots were received prior to 7 p.m. on election night.
Okay. You also talked about the fact that a voter may have requested an absentee ballot and then messed it up in some way and then requested a second absentee ballot. You remember talking about that?
Yes.
Okay. Did you and your staff verify that as for these 53 absentee ballots it issued, that none of these were double votes?
No, none of these voters were double votes.
And so if a voter got two ballots because they had one of their ballots was spoiled or something like that, the board has to go through a process to cancel out another ballot. Is that right?
That's correct.
Why do you do that?
Well, it's for the protection of the voter as well as for the office, because if once we cancel the ballot, it lets us know that that ballot is no longer a live ballot, and they have a new ballot that's been issued to the actual voter.
That ensures that one person only gets one vote.
Yes.
All right, Ms. Turner, I'm going to share my screen now and show you a document that you also have in front of you. There it is. Connor, does that show up on your screen, the earlier processing document?
I see it now.
Okay. All right, Ms. Jernan, are you familiar with this document that I've got before you?
Yes.
Okay, what is it?
It's the actual early processing of absentee ballot reconciliation form.
Okay, and does this relate to the 53 absentee ballots that we've been talking about?
Yes.
Okay. Mr. Crumley asked a good question of Mr. McRae. I was wondering if you knew the answer. It says early processing of absentee ballots. Mr. Crumley asked, if this was from November 4, why is it titled early processing? Do you know the answer to that?
It is the standard form that is used during the entire election. Yes, this is 11/4, but a new form was been created on the 4th. But these ballots were received prior to 7 p.m. on election day, which would have been November the 3rd. And if you look at the top, it also referenced the November 3rd, 2020 election, if you look at the election date. And so therefore, even though they're processed the day after, is also pertaining to that same election.
Okay. Okay, Your Honor, I don't have any further questions at this time.
All right, any questions of the nation?
Yes, Your Honor. Apologies. I'm trying to get it off mute for a second there. Ms. Germany, can we put that form back up for a second, please?
Sure, 1 second.
Thank you.
Does that show up for you, Mr. Crumley?
I am not seeing it. Hold on. Oh, wait. Is it you? You're back on.
Oh, all right, let me try again. Now, that one? There it is. Okay.
There we go. Perfect. Thank you so much.
Sure.
Now, Ms. Germany, did you fill this form out?
No, this is the form that is filled out by the elections office. We do have a form that we do as a transfer, the ballot transfer form.
The ballot transfer, and when is the ballot transfer form used?
The ballot transfer form is used when we're transferring the ballots to the elections office.
But this form is
Both
not.
party signs off, the election supervisor or the assistant supervisor signs off that they're receiving the actual sealed containers.
Okay, so the ballot transfer form is used when absentee ballots are collected from the drop box. Is that correct?
No, that's not correct, sir. You're talking about, that's something totally different.
Okay, so what form is used when ballots are collected from the drop boxes?
There's a absentee ballot drop box form that's used for the absentee ballot drop box.
All right. And does the Board of Registrars maintain those forms?
Yes.
Is there a ballot transfer form signed for these particular 53 ballots?
Yes.
And where is that?
It would be a part of the form, the ballot transfer form that the election official would have signed on yesterday.
And does the Board of Registrar maintain all the drop box collection forms?
Yes, we do.
And do those forms indicate the number of absentee ballots retrieved from the drop boxes?
Yes, they do.
How are ballots tracked when they are transferred from the registrar's office to the Board of Elections?
We have a ballot transfer form. The ballots are, the number of ballots is notated on the crate, as well as the manifest that we send over, and it also has the number, each manifest have the number of, the number of ballots in each batch.
Okay. And so somewhere there should be a ballot transfer form reflecting these 53 ballots, is that correct?
Yes, we do have that.
How do you determine the batch number for absentee ballots?
When we put it in the crate, this batch number, if you're talking about the intake, that's determined by the election number. As far as for the registrars, what we do is put it in the crate and we number the crate, say crate 1, and then we number each batch.
Okay. So the 4E8 on this early processing of absentee ballot forms we have up there. Is that how we would locate these 53 ballots?
That's correct.
And do you know how many absentee ballots were received prior to the 7 p.m. Election Day cutoff in Chatham County?
I think it's approximately 41,000 ballots, that we received prior to election, right, at 7 p.m.
And have all of those timely received ballots been transferred to the Board of Electors?
Yes.
Thank you. That's all I have for Mr. Chairman.
All right, any other questions, Mr. Chairman?
No, sir.
Is that some time? All right,
Your Honor.
all right, any other evidence?
No, sir, none for the respondents.
All right, good. Any other evidence by the petitions and rebuttal?
No, Your Honor.
All right, good. Well, let me hear argument from both sides.
Thank you, Your Honor. Your Honor, again, as we started this hearing off, the primary purpose, frankly, the sole purpose of this petition on behalf of the Trump campaign is to ensure that this long-standing, decades-old Georgia law is adequately enforced and applied by Chatham County. As you heard from the two poll observers, there was a significant amount of confusion and lack of clarity provided to them about these 53 ballots and the entire process used by Chatham County to ensure that late arriving ballots, which are not valid ballots under Georgia law, are not included in the appropriate ballot count for Chatham County. The Trump campaign wants every duly and legally submitted ballot, by mail or otherwise, counted. But what it does not want, and what puts at risk every citizen in Georgia, if proper processes are not in place between the Board of Registrar and the Board of Elections to ensure that late arriving ballots do not get mixed in or are not counted, because those ballots are not legal votes in the state of Georgia. And that's based on a decades-old statute that's been upheld by the 11th Circuit Court of Appeals as a neutral, mandatory election law. One of the things that you saw today that frankly was a bit disturbing is the photo of this secure location for these ballots that are not legal ballots. It's a cardboard box with no tamper evidence tape or any other security in place to preserve the integrity of those ballots and ensure that no ballots within that cardboard box are included in the legal ballots that should be tabulated and counted in Chatham County. So we have brought this petition, and we believe we've carried our burden of showing that Chatham County has not demonstrated compliance with its obligations under Georgia election laws, those laws that ensure the integrity of the vote. And we simply ask that the court issue an order requiring the Board of Registrars and the Board of Electors to document how this process occurred and to establish that they, in fact, have ensured that no late arriving absentee ballots have been included in any of the vote counts for Chatham County.
All right, thank you.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Response? Thank you. Response?
Yes, sir. Thank you, Your Honor. At the beginning of this hearing, Your Honor, I indicated to the court that we anticipated that the evidence would show that there is no evidence of a failure of the Board of Registrars to comply with Georgia law as it relates to the receipt of late absentee ballots. And now, Your Honor, we have in fact proved just that. For that reason, Your Honor, there is no reason for the court to enter an order requiring the Board of Registrars to comply with the law. Such an opinion would be entirely advisory because of the fact that there is no evidence of a non-compliance with the law. This argument related to the box that is in the office that contains the rejected ballots is, I mean, it's a red herring, given the fact that the testimony indicated that that is a secure facility. It's an office that locks. And then it's a building that is locks and is locked and secured, and there's no evidence of a compromise of those security measures. Given all of that, then there is no basis for the court to enter an order requiring the Board of Registrars to do what it's already doing. So for that reason, Your Honor, we would ask that the court dismiss the petition. So there's an intervener and also Mr. Hart, Your Honor. To the extent I can, I defer any further comment to them if they have any.
Your Honor, this is Jeff Harris on behalf of the intervener. Would the court permit me to speak and grant my petition to intervene? Granted. Thank you, Your Honor. The issue before the court is very straightforward. There's a statutory scheme that outlines what's supposed to happen with absentee ballots. And the testimony that the court has heard today is the utterly unpersuasive testimony from two witnesses who testify that they saw people counting absentee ballots, which is what they're supposed to be doing. And both of those witnesses, when they were asked on cross-examination, can you say whether those absentee ballots that you saw someone counting, whether they were received after 7 p.m., and both of them said they had no idea. And that's the end of this. There is literally no competent evidence before this court that there are ballots that have been cast after 7 p.m. that are being counted. And that's the test. The court is asked to decide whether the petitioners have proven by a preponderance of the evidence that there are improper ballots that are being counted in this county, and they have flatly been incapable of proffering competent evidence to prove that point. So what they're now asking you to do is, and by the way, their petition is defective on its face because it says by its own words, we're worried that ballots may be being counted. Well, that's not sufficient. Courts don't resolve disputes about whether something may or may not be happening. The burden is on them to prove that this was happening. They have failed to meet the burden by their own testimony. In this case, should be dismissed. And I agree with Mr. Perkins. If the court does anything other than that, and if the court in particular does what they're asking you to do, which is essentially enter an order that says, go forth and follow the statute, well, that's an advisory opinion. The statute says what it says. It directs the county to do what it's supposed to do. The evidence that the court has heard today is that the county is doing what it's supposed to do, and there is literally no competent probative evidence before this court otherwise. So we would concur with the respondent that this case should be dismissed, and because there's just nothing here to do otherwise. Thank you for allowing me to be heard, Your Honor.
Anybody else?
Your Honor, if I might have a brief rebuttal.
Sure.
Thank you, Your Honor. A couple of points. There was no testimony about the safety within the building where these ballots are located. Second, there were 492 late ballots in 2018. There's only 42 this year. That seems to be an inexplicable discrepancy. Finally, there was an admission that the Chatham County has not complied with Georgia election law. Under Georgia Code 212390, those sequestered ballots should have been transferred to the clerk of court, the Superior Court of Chatham County already. By admission of the witnesses for the respondent, they're still sitting in the Board of Registrar's office. It's quite simple. We're just asking for an equitable solution to this. This information was not provided unless and until we filed the petition. So we believe that it is in the good of this election and the citizens of Chatham County and the state of Georgia that compliance with this statute be established and that an auditable trail be established to prove that the votes are secure and that all legal votes are being counted and no illegal votes are being counted. That's what we'd ask the court to do, Your Honor.
Thank you. Is there any other comments or any other points to be made after listening to the evidence of denying the request, dismissing the petition? Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you, Your Honor.
All right.
Thank you, Your Honor.
Thank you.
Leave.
Is it over? Yeah.
It's over.
In the meeting. I'm gonna